Jim DeSimone. Jim, we heard from not only the prosecutor sort of countering this idea of superhuman strength, but then one of the key witnesses, she was actually called by both sides. What do you think? How does that issue play into the jury's deliberations when it comes to the second degree murder charge?
Well, I think the jury again should look at the facts here. I mean, in theory, police officers talk about superhuman strength. It almost is comical because they immediately when they use force attribute their necessity for the use of force to that person had superhuman strength. Well, somehow they got handcuffs on George Floyd, and while Derek Chauvin wasn't there in the initial encounter with Mr. Floyd, he did come onto a scene where the two officers that were there had gotten Mr. Floyd handcuffed. So if someone had superhuman strength, those two officers presumably wouldn't have been able to accomplish that task. And also in terms of the facts of this case, it's someone who is impervious to pain. Well, Mr. Floyd was complaining of pain in almost not his head, but almost everywhere of his body. He says, "You're being rough on my face. My stomach hurts. I can't breathe." They're putting a pain compliance technique. They are squeezing his fingers for no reason at all, completely
Yeah.
gratuitous, causing him pain when he's on the ground. It hasn't been spoken about a lot, but it is a technique that police officers use. And in this instance, he is screaming out in pain. So he doesn't fit the definition of superhuman strength. Then, as a practical matter, he's in handcuffs.
Right.
No one's ever had enough strength to break open metal handcuffs and get away. You could slip out of them, but if they're too tight, you're not breaking them. And Mr. Floyd wasn't doing that day either.
I was just going to say that. It's funny because one of the things that I often would say to juries is use your common sense. And here, common sense is what you were just talking about. It's nothing complicated. It's nothing that's hard to understand. If he had superhuman strength, they wouldn't have been able to get him into the prone position and get him with those handcuffs on. And I think those handcuffs, Jim, are such an important point to everyone. Everyone that I've talked to about the case say, wasn't he in handcuffs, especially at the beginning before the case sort of took on its a life of its own. But it is a difficult argument. And let's be clear, Eric Nelson has a very difficult job. And sometimes you have got to argue things that maybe are a little contrary to common sense, which it seems like he may have had to do here. Do you agree that if you are limited in your arguments, this may be one that he had no choice but to go to?
Well, there's no question. I mean, I think Eric Nelson is a very talented lawyer. And, of course, I think many of us got a little tired of listening to him yesterday with his 2 hour plus closing argument. But I mean, look, he has passion, he has belief. He shows you that, as a jury, hey, I'm here with you guys. I've been here these past 3 weeks. I believe this man should be found not guilty. And he says it with conviction. So, I don't take anything away from him. He is doing his job. On the other hand, he came out in opening statement, said, use your common sense. I love in close the way they said, you're going to have another witness that you haven't heard from in that jury room. And that is common sense.
Yeah.
And the jurors are told in the jury instructions to bring good judgment and common sense with them into the jury room. They can't listen to outside influences. They can't worry about what the impact their verdict is going to have on society, but they can use their common sense. And common sense, again, supports a guilty verdict here.
Yeah, it's common sense is such an important part of